Hi everybody, welcome to Lunchtime Live. I'll wait until I see some signs that people are here. We are in the bird and butterfly garden again in the Tijuana River Valley, and this is going to be our last TRAM Lunchtime Live. We have tried to sort of focus on the species that live here. And today we are going to be talking about least Bell's vireo. Hi Mark. Hi Anne. Okay, so this is our last TRAM event in the Tijuana River Valley. And we may still focus on some of the birds and species that live down here, but we won't be on location down here. Hi Barb. Okay, so I'll get started. Today we're talking about least Bell's vireo. I'll show you a picture. It's tiny. It's about 4.5 inches. And you can see it has a tiny straight beak. It has kind of short rounded wings. And it has a little white eye ring. And it's camouflaged. I mean, you might not look at it and think this bird is camouflaged, but it is. The gray on top, I don't know if my lighting here is not great there. So it's gray on top and it's white on the bottom. And the reason this is camouflage is because if you were a Cooper hawk and you were up above, and then you were looking down, the gray that you would see blends with the landscape. If you were beneath and looking up, the white would blend with the clouds. So it's a type of camouflage. So least bell, the males and the females look the same. And So these are endangered birds, and they've been listed since 1986. And the reason that they are endangered is the loss of their breeding grounds and, their habitat, and because of brood parasitism by the brown-headed cowbird, which we'll be talking more about later. So just in terms of the habitat, they live in a riparian habitat. And the thing about the riparian habitat is that it supports more species of birds than any other. And the reason is, insects thrive here. And there's water and there's shelter. There's a really good canopy of low bushes all the way up to tall trees. And some of the plants that are in a riparian habitat are things like willow and mule fat, wild rose, elderberry, cottonwoods, sycamores, and of course it's riparian. There's the water. Some of these plants, like willows, don't have a lot of natural defense against bugs, so there's lots and lots of insects. And because you're going to see me swatting because they're bugging me. Anyway, these little endangered least Bell's vireo, they migrate 2,000 miles between their wintering grounds, which is southern Baja, to their breeding grounds, which is Southern California, in this riparian area. Now, there is a recovery plan. Fish and Wildlife has cowbird trapping, and we'll talk more about that later. And they also have an exotic plant control. And if you go back into last year's TRAM Lunchtime Lives, Maria and I talked about the castor bean, the tamarask tree, and the Arundo donax, which is looks kind of like a bamboo, but isn't. Anyway, these are invasive species that really sort of take over the native ones. So we try to protect their habitat and also protect them from these cowbirds. So once they come from southern Baja and they get here to Southern California in the riparian area, their breeding takes place from March to September. And I forgot to say that one of the reasons that this habitat is being taken over. It's being taken over by agriculture, farming, grazing. Then there's foot traffic. There's water diversion because of the agriculture. And it's just disappearing. And the more it disappears, the more birds will disappear. So the little guys get here first. And the ones that arrive first are the males who have already been here a season. Like they bred here last year and nested here last year. And after them are the males that this is their first season. And then finally the females. And they are, least-bell's vireos are site tenacious. That means that they will return to the same territory and maybe even the same nest. And they do defend their territories. They have about a 5-acre territory. And one of the ways that they defend it is they sing on their nest, which may attract them to predators. But they confront other males singing. Their singing sounds like a question and answer. And they have a repertoire of anywhere from like 5 to 15 different songs. And those songs are sort of a vocal fingerprint for individual birds, and it's how they know who their neighbors are or their mates or all of that. I'm sure there's a lot of functions, and most of those songs are kind of indistinguishable to our ears. The males and the females are monogamous, so they do everything together too. They build the nest together, they incubate the eggs together, and they feed their young together. So that is kind of sweet. And this territory defense that they have will start to relax once they have the babies, because the fledglings, the teenagers, they're running amok, and you just have to let your boundaries down a little bit. So the female is the one who selects the nest. And let me show you a picture. The nests are interesting. Hold on. Okay, so here is a picture of a nest. And they build them between two forks in a bush or a tree. And they're little birds, and so their head is about all you'll see sticking out of the nest. And I think the interesting thing about these nests is, and you can't see this picture that well, but those are spider eggs. They like to decorate their nest with spider eggs, which is pretty cool. So they will attempt up to 5 nests if things aren't going well. They keep trying. And they have about 3 to 4 eggs, and they fledge in about 12 days. And the parents continue to feed the young fledglings for a couple of weeks before they're on their own, and then those fledglings will hang around for the whole season. Let me show you their eggs. Okay, so if you look in this nest, you're going to see 2 different kinds of eggs, and you're going to notice that one is a lot bigger. So the spotted ones are the cowbirds. And I am going to save most of the talk about the cowbirds for our next Lunchtime Live, which won't be next week, but it will be the week after. So consider this sort of episode A, and that will be episode B. But I will tell you a little bit about them because we're nearing Halloween and their behavior's a little bit creepy. They will actually, the cowbirds, they're a type of blackbird, and they will kind of sit around and observe other birds that have smaller eggs in the nest. And they'll watch the nest being built and they'll make a plan where they're going to deposit their eggs. Now they do this because they don't incubate their own eggs, right? They deposit them in other birds and let those birds do the work of foster parents. So they don't raise their own children. And they do this because they then put all their energy into egg production. And they have a lot. They make a lot of eggs. And they're very promiscuous. So we'll learn more about them. But the reason it matters with cowbirds is that cowbirds, their eggs are smaller. And let me show you that picture again. What happens is a lot of birds recognize that those aren't their eggs, you know, and they maybe are big enough to kick the eggs out of the nest. But I think the least bells just think, wow, I had a really big egg. And the thing is that the cowbird baby hatches first, and it's so much bigger. This is the cowbird, okay? So you can see it's black with a brown head, okay? And there, do you see how much bigger one of the babies is compared to the others? So that is the cowbird. And the thing is, because he hatches first, he's going to start getting all the attention and all the food. And not only that, he might smother the other babies as they hatch because he's so much bigger, or maybe because he hatches first and the parents have to feed him, they under incubate their own eggs. So it's a big problem. And thankfully, you know, Fish and Wildlife is on it with their recovery plan. A little bit more about the least bells. They are insectivores, so they eat lots of insects, and they feed in the mid to low canopy. And I think I forgot to say that their nests are only about 3 feet off the ground. So they're not way high up in trees somewhere where you couldn't come upon them. So they're eating things like bugs and beetles and caterpillars and grasshoppers. And they do this thing, they can hover, and they glean the leaves with their beak to get the insects. And they can also do a thing called hawking. And hawking is what you see flycatchers do. It's when they look like they have a rubber band. They're up here and they swoop down and then they swoop right back up to the same place. That's called hawking. So they may come down to get an insect and then they go right back up to their lookout. And so they glean the foliage, they hover, they hawk. And as far as predators, most of it mostly occurs during their egg stage. So there's a lot of birds that eat other birds' eggs. And like Cooper hawks, you know, they'll do it. Scrub jays, hawks, snakes will eat birds' eggs, possums, raccoons, cats, and, you know, cowbirds. So sometimes birds will even just peck each other's eggs, you know, peck a hole in them, or in the case of cowbirds, just kick them out of the nest. So You know, their survival rate is, I think, from babyhood to their first year is only about 25%. And they have a lifespan of 7 years. So they're not a long-lived bird. So, you know, we need to give them a break with their habitat and these cowbirds. And that's it. That's about all I've got for today. I'm looking at my notes to see if I forgot anything, but I don't think I did. So, one more picture. I didn't realize how bad the light is here. There's the least bell. Here is the nest with the spider eggs and their little heads sticking out. And here is the nest with the cowbird eggs, the speckled ones, and the little white least bell vireo eggs, kind of a whitish blue. And here is the cowbird and the big-headed baby and the tiny least bells babies. So that's it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. There is, as you know, a huge lag. So you can still put in your questions and Maria can answer them later on. Anyway, thank you guys for coming, and we'll be talking more about those cowbirds as we near Halloween. And we're probably also going to talk about some orb spiders. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.